How is it going, everybody? Happy Monday, and welcome into what is potentially and most likely the final week before the start of your 2022 fantasy football playoff push here. It's week 14, and in this episode, I'll be chatting through some early week 14 waiver wire targets, 10 of them, in fact, that I think can be contributors to teams here down the stretch of this season, or nice bench stashes to potentially add some value down the stretch of this season. So, as always, if you're new around here, it'd mean a lot to me if you head on down, smash that subscribe button, turn the bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content. We've got multiple videos coming out here mostly every single day of the week, so make sure you stay tuned and check those episodes out. But with that being said, let's dive right on into my first waiver pickup for this week. Alrighty, here we go. Let's dive right on into today's episode, starting it out with the running backs as we do every single week here. The first player I want to talk through in this particular waiver episode is James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. Now, there's been quite the interesting development if you watch the Thursday Night Football game with these Bills and how they were deploying their running backs. So Devin Singletary actually took just one more snap than James Cook did in this matchup. And at the end of the day, James Cook was the more productive player. He had over 100 yards from scrimmage and was in the game for some crucial and pivotal downs where Buffalo really needed to convert. Now, it was obviously a game in which the Bills won fairly handily, but still, we're talking about third down conversions here, moving the chains, extending drives, passing down situations. Cook was in the game for those type of plays. So he had 20 total touches in this matchup, 105 yards from scrimmage, 14 of those touches were rushing attempts, 6 of them were receptions. So you had really good involvement on that 43% snap share. Again, it was one more snap for Singletary at 44% from this past week. So James Cook available in 77% of formats. Go check him out. Cam Akers here at 45% rostership. Look, this Rams offense is not very good, and they're on basically backups at nearly every single position. Cam Akers, though, has become kind of a necessity for this team. And again, this isn't a high-level play. This isn't an efficient play right now. This is a bad offensive line. Like I said, a bad offense. But they have to have some element and dynamic of a balanced offensive attack. Otherwise, John Wolford or Bryce Perkins, whoever's back there on a given Sunday, is going to get absolutely killed because those players are not built or talented enough to drop back and throw the football 35 to 40 times a game. So for Akers in this Rams offensive run game, again, like I said, it's kind of a necessity here. You have to keep the defensive balance to some extent in order to kind of preserve yourself on the offensive side of the ball. For Akers this week, it was below 4 yards per carry. It was 18 opportunities, 60 yards on the ground, and 2 total touches. His 1 reception netted 0 yards. However, he did have 2 rushing touchdowns. So in the past few weeks here, where it's been Kyren Williams, kind of the guy that's been getting hyped up by the community and the guy that's been getting a lot of the praise and the respect throughout the obviously fantasy football media, I guess, if that's what you want to consider myself here, or just any outlet out there that you can take advantage of for information and fantasy services. It's primarily been Kyren Williams that we've been talking through here. So kind of a swinging dynamic here going back in the Cam Akers direction after this week. Zonovan Knight here at 47%. This is a name I was somewhat reluctant to talk through in last week's episode, and I actually just totally bypassed him altogether because, to be honest, I had little to no respect for what he would represent in this Jets offense. Now, I do toss him in here because he did make a couple of impressive plays down the stretch of that game that ultimately made me say, hey, until Michael Carter comes back into this offense, he clearly looks like the lead back and the running back to own for this team. And those plays were a 41-yard rush in the fourth quarter that ultimately got him to 90 total rushing yards on the day. 15 opportunities. He did have a couple of goal line carries or carries inside the 5-yard line. However, those didn't materialize into a touchdown. So he was still below 10 fantasy points. If you started him, you probably weren't overall, super enthused with his performance. It was a fairly respectable floor game in a standard or half PPR format, but at the end of the day, again, you're probably looking for a little bit more. Again, though, my takeaway, when you look at J-Rob's 4 rushing attempts for 10 yards total on the day, you're looking at that box score and saying, hey, until Michael Carter comes back here, takes back some pass-catching involvement, and gets, some of those change-of-pace carries, Zonovan seems to be the running back to own for this Jets offense. Deejay Dallas, strap yourselves in here. This is quite the confusing situation. So, essentially, Seattle this weekend kind of got hit with a cluster injury grouping to this running back position. DJ is available widely at 97% availability in Yahoo Fantasy formats. Basically here, Ken Walker had an ankle issue, and it was Deejay Dallas being the next man up because we had Travis Homer inactive with a knee injury as well as an illness. DJ, though, also kind of got hampered and slowed down in this game with his own ankle injury. So literally all three backs are probably going to carry a questionable designation heading into next week's games. Hopefully Ken Walker didn't sustain anything serious, and you can kind of dismiss this after Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever we get an injury update on him. But essentially here, optimistically speaking, if DJ is able to go here and doesn't have some sort of significant injury himself, you're looking at him to be the potential lead back next week. Now, again, the lines are totally blurred here. It could very well be Travis Homer. It could be somebody else. You don't really know what direction this team is going to go. I'm just taking my best guess with the information I have here on Sunday night and obviously giving that information to you guys. He had 10 total touches for 37 yards. Not super impressive stuff, but this has been a team that's been able to run the ball since transitioning to kind of a one-back set here since the Rashad Penny injury and then obviously transitioning to Ken Walker. Deejay Dallas is no Ken Walker, but he is at least some hopefully relatively fresh legs. Into the wide receiver position now, talking some Jameson Williams of the Detroit Lions. Now, I have literally zero analytics that will make you feel better about adding Jameson Williams or stashing him on your bench. However, what we know is this is an incredibly explosive and talented playmaker who is taken with very high draft compensation. They're going to get him on the field. They're going to get him worked into this offense and touching the football here. This week, though, I think was a primarily shake the rust off, get running and sprinting in pads on a football field, and just feel kind of like what it's, like to have a game atmosphere again. He was essentially, Dan Campbell acknowledged this after the game, meant to be the team's gunner. So basically on punt, he's supposed to run down there and make a play on the team's opposing punt returner, or vice versa. You can have a gunner as well, the outside most player on kickoff. So he had 8 total snaps in this game. 2 of them were on a knee at the end of this contest. Obviously, Detroit had their way with Jacksonville this week. And then he had 2 routes run and 1 target, 0 analytical numbers of productivity. So again, literally nothing encouraging for me to send your direction. However, it's a very talented player that will eventually get his way, at least utilized to an extent in this offense. Donovan Peoples-Jones, available in 45% of leagues or rostered in 55% of leagues, whatever way you want to look at it here. He made a name for himself this week. He's actually already had kind of a name for himself. He has made plays throughout his young NFL career, and I really like the idea of this play action pass offense that builds off of their elite offensive line and run game. And the speed and size that DPJ has here, I think that there's some really nice ceiling potential. Obviously, if you watch the Browns game this week, Deshaun Watson looked terrible. Now, the guy hasn't played football in 700 plus days. It's been technically 2 whole NFL seasons since we've seen him in an NFL uniform. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in terms of his actual play on the football field here. He just needs some time to get acclimated back. I actually predicted a pretty rough game for him in this week's matchup. So hopefully you guys were able to avoid him. I do think things get better here in DPJ, obviously with his unique and talented skill set, should be able to contribute here this week. He caught 3 of his 4 passes, returned a punt 76 yards for a touchdown, showing that explosive ability. Nico Collins at 29% rostership here. Nico's a guy who's actually been getting a really solid target volume from this Texans offense consistently, one healthy throughout this season. He just hasn't been getting super high quality opportunities. Now, that comes when your quarterbacks are Kyle Allen and Davis Mills and your team is constantly trailing in ball games, but Nico's still getting the opportunity. A former 3rd-round pick, a guy who has a really nice athletic frame, a large wingspan, and obviously size combination. He is this team's real true perimeter receiver. He just has to get, quality looks again. He had 10 targets this week, caught just 3 of them, though. And obviously, that's not super exciting. He had 35 yards and a touchdown in garbage time. So for Nico, he does have a nice playoff schedule, weeks 15 through 17, Kansas City, Tennessee, and Jacksonville. We'll see if he can make the most of that and be a lower-end flex option in deeper formats. Isaiah McKenzie, I talked through him last week. He went up 4% here to 37% rostership this week after being 33% owned in week 12. For Isaiah McKenzie, it's simply the luxury of playing the slot role for this Bills offense. That doesn't always necessarily mean the most consistent levels of production for Isaiah McKenzie, but what it does mean is having a very respectable ceiling here. For me, this is a stash play. He's got the Jets this week, which isn't a super intriguing matchup. However, the following 2 weeks, Isaiah does have Miami and Chicago in weeks 15 and 16. So if you're looking for a PPR play here, again, if you've got multiple flex positions in your lineup or need a lower end player to fulfill one of those roles, if you have an injured asset, or something of the sort here. McKenzie is obviously a name that you can look for, available in almost 2/3 of leagues. Jared Goff here. This actually should be a fairly high priority pickup for a lot of players this week. We have 6 teams on week 14 bye. Off the top of my head, man, I think we've got Indianapolis, Green Bay, Chicago. I want to say that we might have, nope, that team already went on bye. So I've got 3 of the 6 just kind of rattled off here. Atlanta has a bye, I want to say, as well. I'm missing 2 teams here. But regardless, at the end of the day here, there's a lot of fantasy quarterbacks that are not going to be in action for this week's game. So you've got a guy who potentially in 12-man formats could see a really solid starting use rate for him amongst fantasy owners, because they're just going to need to depend on someone else here. And for me in particular, I've got, a league where I've got Justin Fields and then 2 on my bench who reportedly sustained an ankle injury. I see Jared Goff on my waiver wire, and I'm interested. So this is a guy that has certainly capable weapons to make plays with. DeAndre Swift got a little bit more involved this week. That was exciting to see. Of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, potential emergence here. DJ Chark played a really nice game. He's got stuff going for him. So he's available in half of leagues. He's my quarterback streamer of the week this week. Go check him out. And then the Raiders defense. This, as a matter of fact, is not a very good defense whatsoever. The intrigue here is they play the Rams. The Rams are, of course, one of the most poor and undermanned offenses in the entire National Football League. And for our purposes in fantasy football, that is a huge green light here. You've got a bad offensive line, a bad quarterback, or at least an under-average quarterback, John Wolford, a backup here. You've got yourself a poor run game. You've got yourselves little to no receiving weapons, like Cooper Kupp's gone, Allen Robinson's gone, Van Jefferson and Tutu Atwell and Brandon Powell are this team's top target threats in the passing game. So there's a lot of exploitable matchups here. The pass rush in particular is the matchup that I look for here to get Wolford under pressure, to force errors, to force turnovers. Those are the types of things that I look for in defenses for fantasy football, not necessarily the teams that are holding opponents to the fewest points. Maybe you've got some sort of incentive or booster for points in your leagues, but in standard scoring, you're basically looking at preventing yardage, preventing points as it relates to your defense losing those points. But after that, the stuff that's gaining you points are those negative plays, those turnovers, sacks, fumbles, interceptions, obviously special teams, touchdowns, all that great stuff. So hopefully the Raiders here have a large majority of those up their sleeves for this week and prove me right here. We've been pretty good with our defensive streamers every week. So Raiders, do me well again here in week 14. So as always, if you guys enjoyed, smash the subscribe button down below, smash the like button as well. If you guys are new around here, as always, turn that bell on so you're never late for a new piece of content. My lessons learned episode from week 13 is live on the channel right now. Check that out. Ask your questions in the comment section below, and I'll see you in a future episode. Peace out.